For your
Reading a
entire
calming
life,
story can
you've
help
been
prepare
sold
the
a
mind for
meticulously
restful sleep. The
fabricated
circadian
fairy
clock signals
tale
the brain
about
when to
how,
sleep. The
when,
hypothalamus and
and
pinion
why
regulate this
you should
process.
sleep. It's a narrative carefully designed not to make you rested, but to make you a compliant, continuously consuming gear in the modern economic machine. We are living through an engineered epidemic of exhaustion, and the very
Chronic
institutions
tiredness
promising
leads
to
to poor
cure it,
posture,
the
lack of energy.
multi-billion-dollar
The promise of
pharmaceutical
treatment
giants,
and
the
cure.
wearable tech monopolies, and the relentless corporate hustle culture are the exact ones actively destroying your natural biology. They have pathologized your body's innate rhythms, convinced you that a simple 3 a.m. awakening is a medical crisis, and sold you back the solution in the form of unregulated gummy supplements and memory-wiping sedatives. You haven't failed at sleeping. You've been deliberately set up to fail by a system that profits immensely from your endless fatigue. It's time to stop medicating your burnout and start dismantling the profitable lies we've been force-fed since childhood. Here are 42 mainstream sleep misconceptions that are silently destroying your brain. 1. You've been told since childhood that your brain demands exactly 8 hours of unbroken sleep every single night. If you wake up at 3 a.m., you assume your sleep cycle is completely ruined and you'll be a zombie tomorrow. Make no mistake, you believe this is non-negotiable biology. Doctors, wellness blogs, and your Apple Watch all aggressively preach this continuous 8-hour rule as the holy grail of human health. Here's the truth. Unbroken 8-hour sleep is a highly unnatural, modern invention. Before the Industrial Revolution, humans naturally practiced biphasic sleep. We would sleep for 4 hours, wake up for an hour or two to read, pray, or socialize, and then sleep for another 4. Historian A. Roger E. Kirch spent 16 years digging through archives, finding over 500 historical references to a natural first and second sleep. The unbroken 8-hour mandate was invented by 19th-century factory owners during the Industrial Revolution. They needed to maximize 24-hour shift work, so they forced human biology to adapt to continuous machine schedules. Turns out, your 3 a.m. awakening isn't a clinical disorder. It's just your ancestral factory settings trying to reboot. 2. You believe that if you only sleep 5 hours during the work week, you can just catch up by sleeping in on the weekends. It feels like simple math, like balancing a checkbook of rest. You assume your body just keeps a running tally of hours. Everyone from overworked college students to Silicon Valley CEOs treats this sleep debt like a loan you can easily pay off on Sunday morning. The reality is that binge sleeping on weekends permanently damages your metabolic health. A landmark 2019 study from the University of Colorado proved that weekend catch-up sleep doesn't actually repair the metabolic damage caused by weekday deprivation. Instead, the drastic shift in your wake times confuses your circadian rhythm, severely worsens insulin sensitivity, and promotes weight gain. You aren't healing your brain. You are actively giving yourself metabolic whiplash. This concept of a sleep bank was popularized by early 20th century productivity consultants. They needed industrial workers to push through immense weekday exhaustion without quitting, so they sold them the lie of the weekend recovery. So, sleeping until noon on Sunday doesn't fix your brain. It just gives you severe jet lag without ever leaving your zip code. 3. You've been told that taking a melatonin gummy every night is a perfectly safe, natural way to wind down. It's framed as just a harmless, fruity supplement that gently tells your brain it's time for bed. You probably have a bottle of them on your nightstand right now. Pediatricians recommend it for hyperactive kids, and wellness influencers pop them on camera like they're Skittles. The terrifying truth is that you are chemically castrating your brain's natural ability to produce its own sleep hormones. MIT researchers discovered in the early 2000s that the biologically effective dose of melatonin is incredibly small, around 0.3 milligrams. Yet, most over-the-counter supplements contain 5 to 10 milligrams, which is up to 30 times the necessary amount. Flooding your receptors with this massive dosage forces your pineal gland to downregulate its natural production. The supplement industry successfully lobbied the FDA in 1994 via the DSHEA Act to classify melatonin as a dietary supplement rather than a hormone. This massive legal loophole allowed them to bypass strict dosage regulations and sell heavy habit-forming doses in candy form. Turns out, you aren't naturally winding down. You're just microdosing a daily hormone overdose. 4. You believe that watching TV before bed is universally terrible for your sleep quality. It's common knowledge that screens fry your brain, emit toxic blue light, and keep you wired all night. You've been made to feel guilty every time you fall asleep to Netflix. Every sleep hygiene article on the internet strictly forbids televisions in the bedroom, echoing the warnings of fitness gurus and modern doctors. Actually, passive entertainment is often highly effective for calming an anxious, hyperactive mind. Clinical psychologists often note that rewatching a familiar, low-stakes television show provides predictable cognitive anchoring. This means the predictable plotline stops the brain from ruminating on daily stressors or tomorrow's anxieties. Unlike scrolling social media, which demands active decision-making, rewatching a sitcom requires zero cognitive effort. The rigid no screens rule was born from early 2010's tech panic journalism. These media campaigns lazily conflated the massive dopamine spikes of interactive doom scrolling with the passive, soothing comfort of traditional television. So, falling asleep to The Office for the 10th time isn't a toxic habit. It's an improvised, highly effective anxiety medication. 5. You've been told that an evening nightcap, a glass of wine or whiskey, helps you fall asleep faster. It relaxes your tense muscles, takes the edge off a hard day, and makes your eyelids heavy. You treat it like a sophisticated sedative. This is practically a cultural tradition, endorsed by grandparents, exhausted parents, and a century of pop culture. The brutal reality is that alcohol aggressively destroys your brain's ability to achieve REM sleep. While alcohol acts as a fast-acting sedative that drops you into unconsciousness quickly, sleep scientists at the London Sleep Center confirmed it blocks the critical REM cycles. These are the cycles where emotional processing and memory consolidation actually occur. Because the alcohol metabolizes halfway through the night, it causes a rebound effect that spikes your adrenaline and wakes you up at 3 a.m. This myth was heavily leaned into by mid-century liquor advertising and the entertainment industry. They desperately needed to position daily alcohol consumption as a sophisticated, medicinal way for businessmen to unwind, rather than a dependency. Turns out, a nightcap doesn't give you sleep. It just gives you a light, localized coma. 6. You believe hitting the snooze button gives you a few extra minutes of valuable, gentle rest. It's a comfortable buffer zone that makes waking up less violently jarring. You probably hit it 2 or 3 times every single morning. The snooze button is a staple of modern life, built into literally every alarm clock and smartphone on Earth, completely normalized by everyone you know. In truth, hitting snooze triggers a state of cardiovascular shock called sleep inertia. When you go back to sleep for those few minutes, your brain immediately attempts to start a brand new, deep sleep cycle. When the alarm goes off again 9 minutes later, that cycle is violently interrupted, which artificially spikes your cortisol and skyrockets your blood pressure. You are forcing your nervous system to panic repeatedly. The standard 9-minute snooze was actually an arbitrary engineering constraint invented by the Lewitt Corporation in the 1950s. The physical gear teeth in early mechanical clocks literally couldn't accommodate exactly 10 minutes, so they settled for 9. So, you aren't easing into the morning. You're just putting your heart through a daily stress test based on a 1950s engineering flaw. 7. You've been told that early birds are naturally more productive, disciplined, and destined for success. If you sleep past 8 a.m., you are wasting your life and clearly lack ambition. You feel a deep moral failure when you sleep in. This narrative is pushed aggressively by billionaire hustle bros, motivational speakers, and the entire corporate management structure. The truth is, your preferred sleep schedule is genetically hardwired, not a measure of your personal work ethic. Geneticists have identified the PER3 gene, which dictates your body's circadian chronotype. Studies show that about 30% of the population are biological night owls whose peak cognitive and creative hours naturally occur in the late evening. Forcing a night owl to wake up at 5 a.m. actually diminishes their cognitive capacity to that of a legally drunk person. The moral superiority of early rising is a leftover from agrarian societies where sunlight dictated farm work. It was later weaponized by corporate America during the Industrial Revolution to shame factory workers into early commutes without complaint. Turns out, waking up at 5 a.m. doesn't make you morally superior. It just makes you tired and insufferable. 8. You believe that a glass of warm milk contains special chemicals that physically make you sleepy. It's the ultimate wholesome, old-fashioned remedy for a restless night. You assume it's basically a natural sleeping pill. Parents have used this trick on their children for generations, and it is repeated in countless children's books and family lore. Here is the pivot. The amount of sleep-inducing chemicals in milk is biologically irrelevant to a human brain. It is true that milk contains tryptophan, which is an amino acid related to sleep regulation. However, nutritional research shows that the actual concentration is so incredibly low that you would need to drink several gallons of it to noticeably affect your brain chemistry. The heat of the milk does absolutely nothing to activate these chemicals either. This myth was heavily promoted by post-WW dairy boards in the United States and the UK. They were sitting on massive government-subsidized surpluses of milk production and needed a marketing gimmick to offload it onto consumers before bedtime. So, warm milk doesn't chemically sedate you. It just triggers a psychological placebo effect from when your mom used to tuck you in. 9. You've been told that counting sheep is a proven, scientific way to force your brain to fall asleep. The repetitive visualization is supposed to bore your active mind into shutting down. It is the go-to advice for anyone tossing and turning. It is the most universally recognized symbol of trying to sleep in Western culture, featured in every cartoon and comic strip. The reality is, counting sheep actually delays sleep onset and keeps you awake longer. A famous 2001 behavioral study from Oxford University proved that the mental effort required to visualize and track moving objects keeps the brain's executive functions highly active. Instead of relaxing your cortex, jumping sheep engage your working memory and prevent the exact neurological winding down required for sleep. Subjects who visualized calming, static scenes like a waterfall fell asleep 20 minutes faster. The origin of this myth dates back to 12th century shepherds in early Britain. They literally had to count their massive flocks at night to ensure none were eaten by wolves, which was an activity fueled by sheer adrenaline and financial anxiety, not relaxation. Turns out, counting sheep is a fantastic way to stay awake if you're guarding livestock, but a terrible way to rest a modern brain. 10. You believe that snoring is mostly a harmless, albeit annoying, quirk of sleeping. As long as you aren't outright gasping for air, it's just a funny physiological sound you make when you're tired. You mostly just feel bad for whoever is sharing your bed. Spouses joke about it over breakfast, and sitcoms have used it as a reliable, light-hearted punchline for decades. The truth is, chronic heavy snoring is slowly and methodically starving your brain of oxygen. Neurological studies have shown that the intense vibration of heavy snoring physically damages the carotid artery over time. Furthermore, the restricted airflow causes microhypoxia, which significantly increases your risk of strokes and early-onset dementia by literally killing off brain cells night after night. It is a severe cardiovascular event happening in your throat. The trivialization of snoring was largely driven by the over-the-counter nasal strip industry in the 1990s. They aggressively marketed snoring as a mere partner annoyance that could be solved with a piece of tape, rather than urging people to see a doctor for a serious medical red flag. So, your snoring isn't a quirky nighttime soundtrack. It's a nightly distress signal from a suffocating brain. 11. You've been told that prescription sleeping pills provide a deep, restorative night of sleep. You believe that because they successfully knock you out, your brain must be actively healing and recharging. Doctors prescribe them by the tens of millions, and commercials constantly show peaceful, smiling actors waking up refreshed. Here is the brutal truth. Prescription sleep aids don't induce sleep. They induce medically sanctioned amnesia. Sleep scientists like Matthew Walker have proven that drugs like Ambien and Lunesta act as heavy sedatives that knock out the cortex, but they completely block the electrical brainwaves, like sleep spindles, necessary for memory consolidation. You are essentially rendering yourself unconscious without getting any of the biological benefits of actual sleep. Pharmaceutical companies in the 1980s and 90s aggressively rebranded these tranquilizers and sedatives as harmless sleep aids to deliberately dodge the nasty cultural stigma of Valium-era addiction. Turns out, you aren't getting a great night's rest. You're just putting yourself into a localized chemical coma. 12. You believe that taking over-the-counter cold medicine like Nyquil or Zizquil is a perfectly harmless way to knock yourself out when you're desperate. It feels like a safe, trusted family remedy for those nights when you just can't shut your brain off. Every medicine cabinet in the country has a bottle of this blue or purple syrup. The terrifying reality is that you are actively inducing a mild brain fog that mimics early-stage dementia. The active ingredient in these medicines is diphenhydramine, an antihistamine that violently blocks acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter absolutely critical for learning, memory, and cognitive function. Long-term neurological studies have linked chronic use of anticholinergic drugs to a significantly increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Pharmaceutical companies in the 1980s realized the drowsy side effect of their allergy medications could be heavily monetized, so they literally slapped a purple sleep label on the exact same chemical and doubled the price. So you aren't catching up on a harmless night of sleep. You're just chemically deleting tomorrow's short-term memory. 13. You've been told that magnesium supplements are the ultimate natural cure for all of your insomnia. You believe that a simple spray or pill will instantly relax your nervous system and melt away your stress. TikTok wellness influencers and holistic biohackers claim it is the missing miracle mineral that modern diets lack. Here is the pivot. Unless you have a specific, clinically diagnosed deficiency, magnesium does absolutely nothing to cure your insomnia. While magnesium plays a minor role in relaxing muscles, double-blind clinical trials show negligible improvements in actual sleep architecture for healthy adults. Your body simply filters out and excretes the excess mineral almost immediately. The magnesium deficiency epidemic was a brilliant 2010s marketing narrative pushed by the global supplement industry, taking a cheap, incredibly abundant mineral and brilliantly rebranding it as a premium biohacking necessity. Turns out, Your expensive magnesium powder isn't putting you to sleep. It's just giving you very relaxed, highly expensive urine. 14. You believe that taking a small dose of a CBD gummy before bed will naturally cure your racing mind. It is marketed as the ultimate plant-based chill pill without the high of THC. It is sold everywhere from sketchy gas stations to luxury wellness boutiques, heavily endorsed by athletes and celebrities. The truth is, low doses of CBD are scientifically proven to act as a stimulant, actively keeping you awake. Clinical pharmacological studies demonstrate that while massive clinical-grade doses of CBD, upwards of 300 milligrams, can have a sedative effect, the tiny 10 to 25 milligram doses found in commercial gummies actually increase wakefulness and alertness in the brain. The 2018 U.S. Farm Bill legalized hemp, creating a massive, unregulated green rush, where marketers aggressively slapped sleep aid labels on low-dose CBD products to capitalize on consumer desperation, completely ignoring how the pharmacology actually works. So, eating that $4 gummy isn't calming your nerves. You're essentially taking a very expensive hemp-flavored espresso shot. 15. You've been told that valerian root is an ancient, clinically proven herbal remedy for deep sleep. It sounds incredibly earthy and natural, like something an old-world apothecary would prescribe to cure your modern anxiety. It is the star ingredient in virtually every sleepy time tea and natural supplement aisle on Earth. The reality is that modern science has repeatedly proven it performs no better than a literal sugar pill. Massive meta-analyses of randomized controlled trials have consistently shown zero statistical difference in sleep quality, latency, or duration between valerian root and a placebo. Any active compounds the plant may possess degrade far too quickly during commercial processing to have any neurological impact by the time it reaches your mug. The supplement industry effectively hijacked European folk medicine from the 1800s, mass-producing cheap, dried-out root dust, and heavily leveraging the ancient wisdom trope to entirely avoid modern clinical scrutiny. Turns out, the only thing putting you to sleep is the comforting warm water you just steeped the useless weeds in. 16. You believe that if a sleep aid says non-habit forming right on the box, you can take it safely every single night without consequence. It feels like a medically sanctioned green light to rely on the drug permanently. The FDA allows this comforting label on almost every over-the-counter sleep medicine, so you inherently trust it. Here is the truth. Your brain develops a profound, crippling psychological dependency long before a chemical one. While the active chemicals might not cause severe physical withdrawal symptoms like opioids do, your brain quickly associates the physical act of swallowing a pill with the sheer ability to fall asleep. When you try to stop, you experience severe rebound insomnia, where massive sleep anxiety prevents you from resting naturally. Pharmaceutical copywriters in the 1970s literally invented the term non-habit forming as a brilliant legal sleight of hand. They narrowly defined a habit strictly as physical, life-threatening withdrawal, entirely ignoring the crippling psychological reliance their products engineer. So, your body might not be chemically addicted, but your brain is absolutely being held hostage by a marketing loophole. 17. You've been told that if you can drink a cup of coffee right after dinner and still fall asleep, caffeine just doesn't affect your rest. You genuinely believe you possess a unique genetic tolerance to stimulants? Your dad, your boss, and your coworkers constantly boast about drinking espresso at 9 p.m. and sleeping like a baby. The brutal pivot: you are successfully losing consciousness, but your brain is actively being denied deep sleep. Caffeine has a quarter life of up to 12 hours in the human body. Even if you don't feel jittery and manage to pass out, EEG brain scans show that lingering caffeine physically blocks your brain from entering restorative, slow-wave sleep. You wake up exhausted the next morning and immediately reach for more coffee to fix the problem you created. This caffeine immunity myth was quietly encouraged by the mid-century coffee lobby, like the Pan American Coffee Bureau, who desperately wanted to normalize coffee as an elegant after-dinner beverage to double their daily sales volume. Turns out, your superpower of sleeping through a late-night espresso isn't a flex. It's just a fast track to chronic brain damage. 18. You believe that diffusing lavender oil in your bedroom physically alters your brainwaves to induce sleep. It feels like a powerful, natural biohack that changes the chemistry of the room. Aromatherapists and entire aisles of Bed Bath & Beyond swear by its potent medicinal power to cure insomnia. The reality is that lavender has absolutely zero inherent sedative properties. You've just been deeply conditioned to associate the smell with relaxation. Rigorous neurological tests show absolutely no change in brainwave activity or sleep architecture when subjects are exposed to lavender. Any sleep benefit you experience comes purely from the placebo effect and the psychological routine of creating a calming environment before bed. The massive essential oil multi-level marketing boom of the 2010s aggressively pushed these bogus scientific claims. They managed to turn a pleasant, generic floral scent into a multi-million-dollar pseudo-medical necessity for anxious insomniacs. So, the oil isn't biohacking your nervous system. It's just making your sleep deprivation smell incredibly expensive. 19. You've been told that L-theanine supplements knock you out by shutting down your stress hormones. It's pitched as the ultimate brain-calming pill that shuts off the noise. Biohackers and tech bros take it religiously to cure their cortisol spikes and optimize their nightly recovery. The truth is, it doesn't actually put you to sleep. It just stops you from actively panicking about being awake. L-theanine promotes the generation of alpha brain waves, which are neurologically associated with a state of relaxed wakefulness and meditation, not the theta or delta waves required for deep sleep. It takes the edge off your anxiety, but doesn't trigger the physiological mechanisms required for actual sleep onset. The nootropic supplement industry extrapolated data from green tea studies in the 1990s, aggressively isolating the compound and deliberately mischaracterizing it as a heavy-duty sleep aid so they could charge a massive premium. Turns out, the pill isn't a sedative. It just makes you delightfully apathetic about the fact that it's 3 a.m. 20. You believe that the heavy dose of tryptophan in a massive turkey dinner is exactly what causes your intense post-holiday food coma. It's a fun, scientific-sounding fact that perfectly explains why you can't keep your eyes open. Every Thanksgiving, family members universally blame the bird for their inability to stay awake on the couch. The pivot. A turkey has no more tryptophan in it than a standard piece of ordinary cheddar cheese. The actual, biological cause of your profound fatigue is a massive carbohydrate crash. Consuming thousands of calories of mashed potatoes, stuffing, and pie causes a colossal insulin spike, which forces your body to expend massive amounts of energy on digestion, followed by a dramatic blood sugar crash that leaves you comatose. The American poultry industry in the 1980s actively embraced and promoted this quirky piece of pseudoscience. They wanted to make turkey the center of a comforting, homey cultural narrative, perfectly distracting consumers from the grim reality of factory farming. So, it wasn't a magical, sleepy bird that knocked you out. It was the 4 plates of pure carbohydrates you just inhaled. 21. You've been told that walking exactly 10,000 steps a day is the golden physiological baseline for high energy, fat loss, and perfect nightly sleep. You diligently track this number, feeling a deep sense of productive guilt if you fall short by bedtime. Every fitness tracker, HR wellness program, and lifestyle guru treats this specific number like a biological commandment. Here is the pivot. The number 10,000 is a completely fabricated, arbitrary marketing gimmick. Massive epidemiological studies show that the mortality and health benefits of walking actually plateau around 7,500 steps. Anything beyond that offers rapidly diminishing returns for your sleep quality and heart health. The origin of the 10,000-step rule dates back to the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. A Japanese clockmaker wanted to sell a new pedometer and named it Manpo-kei, which literally translates to 10,000 steps meter, simply because the Japanese character for 10,000 happens to look exactly like a little walking man. Turns out, you aren't optimizing your deep sleep biology. You're just honoring a 60-year-old Japanese billboard. 22. You believe the old hustle culture mantra that sleep is a waste of time, and that you can just sleep when you're dead. You've internalized the idea that unconsciousness is merely unproductive downtime that actively steals hours away from your goals. This toxic philosophy is proudly worn as a badge of honor by Wall Street bankers, Silicon Valley founders, and internet alpha males. The brutal truth is that sleep is actually the most metabolically active, productive state your brain ever enters. When you sleep, your brain's glymphatic system physically shrinks your neurons by 60% to flush cerebrospinal fluid through your tissue, power washing away the toxic beta-amyloid proteins that accumulate during waking hours. This downtime myth was heavily popularized by Thomas Edison, who publicly bragged about sleeping only 3 hours a night to project an image of superhuman genius, completely hiding the fact that he took massive multi-hour naps in his office every afternoon. So, sleep won't keep you from achieving your goals. Avoiding it will just make sure you get early-onset Alzheimer's and forget what they were. 23. You've been told about the ultimate biohack called polyphasic sleep, where you can survive on just 2 hours of sleep a day by taking 20-minute naps every 4 hours. It's pitched as the ultimate productivity cheat code to unlock 22 hours of waking genius. Tech forums and Reddit biohackers are obsessed with this, often claiming it was the secret routine of Leonardo da Vinci and Nikola Tesla. The reality is that the polyphasic schedule aggressively destroys your endocrine system and mimics the exact physiological effects of clinical torture. Because you never allow your brain to string together 90-minute sleep cycles, you are entirely starved of the continuous REM sleep required to regulate insulin and emotional stability. The most famous polyphasic routine, the Uberman schedule, wasn't invented by Renaissance geniuses. It was literally made up by a desperate college student named Marie Staver in 1998 to cram for her philosophy finals. Turns out, you aren't a visionary Renaissance artist. You're just a highly caffeinated, sleep-deprived college kid running on dial-up. 24. You believe that waking up at 4 a.m. is the undisputed secret to massive financial success and getting ahead of the competition. If you beat the sun, you beat the market. Every morning routine video, Navy SEAL memoir, and CEO biography aggressively pushes this narrative. The pivot. Your brain does not care what numbers are on the clock. It only cares about your biological chronotype and your total sleep volume. Forcing yourself to wake up at 4 a.m. without fundamentally shifting your entire circadian rhythm backward just induces a state of chronic social jet lag, plunging your IQ and executive function levels for the first 3 hours of the day. Corporate PR teams in the 1990s began deliberately highlighting these bizarre, extreme CEO sleep habits to build mythologies around otherwise boring executives, making them seem like untouchable demigods of discipline. So, setting your alarm for 4 a.m. won't automatically make you a billionaire. It will just make you awake exhausted, and poor 3 hours earlier. 25. You've been told that eating a massive, hearty breakfast right after waking up is absolutely crucial to jumpstart your metabolism and wake up your brain. It's supposed to give you the clean energy you need to tackle the day. Cereal commercials, old-school nutritionists, and your parents have drilled this into your head since kindergarten. The truth is, forcing food into a newly waking digestive system actually spikes your blood sugar and guarantees a massive mid-morning energy crash. Fasting for the first hour or two after waking actually allows your body's cortisol to peak naturally, which clears morning brain fog and stabilizes your insulin for the rest of the day. The phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, was completely fabricated in the 1920s by John Harvey Kellogg and early PR pioneer Edward Bernays, specifically to sell more cornflakes and heavily subsidize the struggling American pork industry by pushing bacon. You aren't naturally jump-starting your day. You're just being successfully manipulated by a century-old bacon lobby. 26. You believe that if you push past your intense tiredness at 10 p.m., you will catch a magical second wind of natural, highly productive energy. It feels like unlocking a secret reserve tank in your brain just when you need to finish a project. College students cramming for exams and late-night writers rely heavily on this phenomenon. The terrifying reality is that this second wind is actually an acute clinical stress response. When you ignore your natural biological sleep window, your brain assumes there is a predator or a life-threatening emergency keeping you awake, so it dumps a massive, toxic load of cortisol and adrenaline directly into your bloodstream to force you to stay conscious. This biological survival mechanism evolved over millennia to keep early humans alive if a tiger attacked their camp at midnight, not to help you finish formatting an Excel spreadsheet. So, you aren't tapping into a secret reserve of nighttime genius. Your brain just literally thinks you're running for your life. 27. You've been told that grinding on dangerously low sleep builds mental toughness and resilience. If you can function on 4 hours of rest, you are stronger than the weaklings who need 8. Motivational speakers, extreme fitness influencers, and military boot camps romanticize this idea of callousing your mind through deprivation. The truth is, chronic sleep deprivation fundamentally damages your brain's amygdala, making you incredibly emotionally fragile and highly reactive. Functional MRI brain scans show a 60% increase in emotional reactivity in the amygdala after just one single night of restricted sleep, completely severing its connection to the logical prefrontal cortex. This toughness narrative was weaponized by 1980s corporate management training programs, which deliberately conflated biological sleep deprivation with unquestioning company loyalty. Turns out, sleeping 4 hours a night doesn't make you an unbreakable alpha wolf. It just makes you an emotionally unstable toddler in an expensive suit. 28. You believe that working from the comfort of your bed is the ultimate modern luxury, a great way to ease into your productive day. Answering emails wrapped in blankets is peak remote work freedom. Digital nomads and Instagram aesthetics have completely normalized treating your mattress like an ergonomic office chair. Here is the pivot. Working in bed actively destroys the neurological association between your mattress and unconsciousness. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, relies heavily on a concept called stimulus control. If your brain associates your bed with the stress of your inbox, Zoom meetings, and problem-solving, it will automatically trigger cortisol the exact moment your head hits the pillow at night, making sleep impossible. The laptop-in-bed lifestyle aesthetic was heavily manufactured by tech companies in the late 2000s to seamlessly erase the boundary between domestic rest and constant 24/7 labor. So, Working in your pajamas isn't a luxury. It's just letting your boss live rent-free under your duvet. 29. You've been told that if you are physically exhausted from a brutal day of hard work, you will automatically fall asleep the second you lie down. It's the romanticized idea of honest, hard labor curing all insomnia. Farmers, athletes, and blue-collar culture deeply pride themselves on this cause and effect relationship. The reality is that physical fatigue and neurological sleepiness are two entirely completely different biological states. You can have muscles that are physically drained to the absolute point of collapse, but still be neurologically wired and incapable of sleep due to hyperarousal in your nervous system. Sleep is an active function of the brain, not a passive exhaustion of the muscles. This conflation stems from an outdated, mechanistic view of the human body from the 1800s, which assumed humans operated like simple batteries that just emptied out and needed to be plugged in. Turns out, working yourself to the bone doesn't buy you a guaranteed ticket to dreamland. It just buys you a very exhausted, achy panic attack at 2 a.m. 30. You believe that yawning means your brain is suffocating and trying to aggressively gulp in more oxygen to keep you awake. It makes perfect, intuitive sense. You're tired. You need air. You yawn. Grade school science teachers, gym coaches, and general common sense have passed this fact down for centuries. The truth is, yawning doesn't oxygenate your brain. It literally air conditions it. Researchers at Princeton University discovered that the massive, deep intake of ambient air during a yawn rapidly cools the blood vessels in your nasal cavity. This chilled blood is then sent directly to your brain to lower its internal temperature, optimizing its function when it starts running hot from sleep deprivation. The oxygen deprivation hypothesis was actually proposed by Hippocrates all the way back in ancient Greece, and society simply never bothered to update the textbooks until 2007. So, yawning in the middle of a meeting doesn't mean you're suffocating. Your brain is just frantically turning on the AC to deal with your boss's PowerPoint presentation. 31. You've been told that turning on night shift or dark mode completely neutralizes the negative effects of using your phone in bed. You believe that shifting your screen to a warm orange hue physically protects your melatonin production. Apple and Android tell you it works, and millions of users rely on it to scroll guilt-free at midnight. The brutal reality is that the color of your screen doesn't matter if the content you are consuming is actively triggering your fight-or-flight response. A major 2021 study from Brigham Young University tracked the sleep outcomes of smartphone users and found absolutely zero difference in sleep quality between those using night shift and those using regular screen settings. The psychological engagement of texting, doom scrolling, and processing new information spikes your cognitive alertness, completely overriding any negligible benefit of blue light reduction. Apple introduced Night Shift in iOS 9.3 back in 2016 as a brilliant PR band-aid. They needed a way to alleviate the growing public guilt over smartphone addiction without actually encouraging users to put their highly profitable devices down. Turns out, turning your screen orange doesn't protect your sleep. It just gives your late-night anxiety a warmer aesthetic. 32. You believe that smart alarm apps can accurately read your brain waves and wake you up exactly during your lightest phase of sleep. You place your phone on the edge of your mattress, trusting that its advanced sensors know exactly when you are resting perfectly. Top-rated App Store reviews swear it cures morning grogginess and optimizes your wake-up time. Here is the truth. A smartphone resting on a mattress is scientifically incapable of measuring your actual sleep stages. These apps rely entirely on your phone's built-in accelerometer to measure physical movement. Sleep scientists continually emphasize that physical stillness does not equal deep sleep. You can be completely paralyzed in REM sleep or lying perfectly still while wide awake in a panic. The only way to accurately read sleep cycles is by measuring electrical brain activity with an EEG. In the early 2010s, app developers realized they could gamify the iPhone's rudimentary motion sensors. They packaged incredibly flawed, guessed data into sleek, convincing graphs to sell 99-cent app downloads to desperate insomniacs. So, your phone isn't performing a high-tech neurological analysis, it's just aggressively guessing your brain state based on how often you shift your legs. 33. You've been told that blasting a white noise machine all night is a harmless, medically backed way to soothe your brain into deep recovery. It sounds like a gentle waterfall that drowns out traffic, and millions of parents use it to force their babies to stay asleep. You assume it creates a neutral, peaceful audio vacuum. The terrifying reality is that constant, unbroken white noise actively forces your auditory cortex to stay vigilant and never truly rest. Recent neuroplasticity research suggests that pumping a continuous, static wall of sound into your ears all night prevents the auditory system from experiencing crucial periods of silence. Over time, this chronic sensory stimulation can actually degrade the brain's ability to map spatial sounds and may worsen tinnitus by preventing the auditory nerves from down-regulating. The commercial white noise industry originally evolved in the late 20th century, from heavy-duty tinnitus maskers and psychiatric ward sound baffles. Marketers eventually realized they could rebrand this intense sensory masking equipment as a cozy, consumer lifestyle product for noisy apartments. Turns out, you aren't resting your brain in a peaceful sonic cocoon. You're just subjecting your auditory cortex to an 8-hour static interrogation. 34. You believe that sleeping under a heavy 20-pound weighted blanket naturally lowers your cortisol and cures your nightly anxiety. It is aggressively marketed as the physical equivalent of a warm, therapeutic hug. Instagram ads and lifestyle blogs swear it is the ultimate biohack for a restless nervous system. Here is the pivot. Unless you have a diagnosed sensory processing disorder, that blanket is actively destroying your body's ability to regulate its core temperature. As established, your core temperature must drop significantly to maintain deep, slow-wave sleep. Pinning yourself under 20 pounds of dense glass beads and heavy fabric traps immense amounts of body heat, forcing you to sweat, which eventually fragments your sleep architecture and wakes you up. Weighted blankets were originally specialized clinical tools used by occupational therapists in the 1990s to calm pediatric patients with severe autism. In 2017, viral Kickstarter campaigns successfully stripped the medical context and mass-marketed them to stressed-out millennials as an expensive, universal cure for modern existential dread. So, the blanket isn't curing your deep psychological stress, it's just physically trapping it in a pool of your own night sweats. 35. You've been told that expensive wearable tech rings perfectly map your nightly REM and deep sleep data. You wake up, sync your ring, and let a completely arbitrary sleep score dictate how you feel about your entire day. Tech CEOs, professional athletes, and biohackers treat this data as absolute gospel. The truth is, commercial wearables have a massive margin of error and frequently miscategorize your sleep stages by up to 40%. Wearables like the Oura Ring rely on photoplethysmography, measuring blood volume changes through your skin, and movement tracking to guess your brain waves. Clinical validation studies have repeatedly shown that while these rings are decent at guessing total sleep time, they are notoriously inaccurate at distinguishing between light sleep and REM sleep, often confusing the two entirely. The wearable tech industry desperately needed a way to justify aggressive, recurring monthly subscription models. They engineered heavily gamified, incredibly confident-looking user interfaces to hide the fact that their hardware is just making highly educated guesses based on your pulse. Turns out, a piece of jewelry on your index finger doesn't actually know what your brain is doing. It just has a very persuasive graphic designer. 36. You believe that listening to a famous celebrity read you a bedtime story on a meditation app is a scientifically proven way to reprogram your racing mind. You pay a premium subscription to have Matthew McConaughey or Harry Styles whisper you to sleep. It feels like the ultimate, luxurious modern wind-down routine. The reality is that active listening fundamentally keeps your brain's language processing centers engaged, delaying the actual transition into stage 1 sleep. True sleep onset requires your thoughts to become fragmented and nonsensical. Following a linear narrative, even a soothing one, forces your temporal lobe to stay active, stringing together sentences and visualizing scenes, which prevents the cognitive unwinding necessary to lose consciousness. Venture capital-backed wellness apps in the late 2010s hit a massive user plateau. To scale their monetization and stand out in a crowded market, they aggressively pivoted from clinical mindfulness to celebrity entertainment, prioritizing Hollywood star power over actual sleep science. So, a celebrity isn't actually lulling your brain into deep REM sleep. They are just holding your attention hostage until you pass out from sheer exhaustion. 37. You've been told that sleeping with your Wi-Fi router on or your phone near your bed exposes your brain to dangerous radiation that mutates your sleep cycles. Alternative wellness circles are obsessed with this, telling you to switch off your home's breaker at night. They aggressively sell you expensive silver-threaded EMF-blocking canopies to protect your pineal gland from 5G. Here is the unglamorous truth. The non-ionizing radiation emitted by consumer electronics has absolutely zero proven biological effect on human sleep architecture or melatonin production. The radio waves from your router and smartphone are incredibly low energy. They physically lack the power to break chemical bonds in your DNA or penetrate your skull to disrupt your brain waves. Decades of extensive epidemiological studies have repeatedly failed to find any link between standard Wi-Fi exposure and insomnia. This modern panic is a direct exploitation of eco-anxiety by fringe wellness companies. They realized they could invent an invisible, terrifying modern villain and immediately sell wealthy insomniacs a $500 protective canopy to cure a problem that literally doesn't exist. Turns out, your Wi-Fi router isn't frying your melatonin. The only thing disrupting your sleep is the sheer panic of reading conspiracy theories on your phone. 38. You believe that spending thousands of dollars on a high-tech, water-cooled smart mattress pad is the ultimate requirement to achieve peak sleep performance. It dynamically adjusts the temperature of your bed using AI algorithms. Every major health podcast violently shills these devices as the only way to perfectly regulate your core body heat. The brutal reality is that a standard, cool bedroom and a cheap pair of breathable cotton sheets achieve the exact same physiological result for free. Your body is incredibly adept at thermoregulation. If the ambient temperature of your room is set around 65 degrees, 118 degrees, your core will naturally dump excess heat through your extremities. Forcing ice-cold water to circulate directly against your spine often causes micro-shivering, which actively disrupts your REM cycle and wakes you up. Silicon Valley engineers love to invent immensely complex, expensive hardware solutions for incredibly basic environmental problems. They took the age-old advice of crack a window and use lighter blankets and successfully turned it into a luxury subscription product for biohacking bros with too much disposable income. So, You don't need an AI-powered water chiller to sleep perfectly. You literally just need to turn on a fan. 39. You've been told that taping your lips shut before bed is a revolutionary, safe biohack that forces nasal breathing and cures sleep apnea. Viral TikTok trends and extreme fitness influencers swear by this specialized adhesive tape. They claim it maximizes your oxygen intake, calms your nervous system, and drastically sharpens your jawline while you rest. Here is the terrifying truth. If you have an undiagnosed deviated septum, allergies, or actual obstructive sleep apnea, mouth taping can cause dangerous carbon dioxide retention and partial asphyxiation. Your body opens its mouth during sleep as a vital biological failsafe when the nasal airway is compromised. Physically sealing off that emergency airway without a doctor's supervision forces your cardiovascular system to work exponentially harder to pull oxygen through restricted passages, violently spiking your blood pressure while you are unconscious. The trend originated from extreme interpretations of a best-selling 2020 book on breathwork. Social media influencers aggressively stripped away all of the medical nuance and disclaimers, turning a highly specific respiratory therapy technique into a dangerous viral aesthetic challenge. Turns out, taping your mouth shut doesn't make you an elite breather. It just turns a mild sinus infection into a nightly hostage situation. 40. You believe that hyperfixating on your daily sleep score and meticulously adjusting your entire life to make your app happy will eventually cure your insomnia. You actively check your wearable data the second you open your eyes, letting the numbers dictate your mood. Millions of people are obsessed with the quantified self movement, treating their bodies like machines to be optimized. The truth is, this exact obsession is causing a brand new clinical phenomenon called orthosomnia, where the sheer panic over perfect tracking metrics is the exact thing destroying your sleep. In a 2017 case study, researchers at Northwestern University coined the term to describe patients who became so dependent on tracking devices that they actually ruined their sleep trying to measure up to the data. The psychological pressure to score well fuels anxiety and exacerbates insomnia the moment your head hits the pillow. Wearable tech companies designed these gamified, highly judgmental scoring systems specifically to ensure daily active engagement with their hardware. They successfully convinced users that their natural, messy biology was a math test they were currently failing. Turns out, the expensive device meant to monitor your peace is the exact thing actively destroying it. 41. You've been told that dying in your sleep is a peaceful, painless way to go. It's the ideal end we all hope for. A quiet slipping away into the dark without a single moment of suffering. Society uses this comforting thought to cope with unexpected grief, and doctors often offer it as a solace to mourning families. The jarring truth is, many people who die in their sleep actually wake up in severe distress, but are too physically compromised to call for help. Coroners and sleep medicine experts note that fatal cardiovascular events, like sudden cardiac arrests or massive strokes, frequently occur during the early morning REM sleep spike. This intense physiological surge jolts the victim into brief, panicked consciousness. Because their body is already failing or partially paralyzed from the event, they simply cannot signal for intervention. This comforting myth was heavily perpetuated by early 20th century physicians. Lacking modern diagnostic tools and desperately wanting to spare families the immense psychological trauma of imagining their loved ones suffering, doctors framed unwitnessed nocturnal deaths as inherently gentle. So, it's a beautiful, merciful lie we tell the living, but the biological reality is much darker. 42. You believe that if you just fix your diet, buy the right mattress, and avoid screens, you will finally sleep perfectly. Insomnia is framed purely as a personal failure, a lack of discipline that you can simply optimize your way out of. The entire multi-billion-dollar wellness industry, life coaches, and corporate wellness programs thrive on pushing this exact premise. The ultimate truth: modern society is structurally designed to make healthy sleep impossible for the average working-class human. Chronic financial stress, the high cost of healthcare, 2-hour daily commutes, and the constant threat of job insecurity hyperactivate your amygdala. This state of constant low-grade survival panic makes restorative sleep biologically impossible, regardless of how much chamomile tea you drink or how expensive your mattress is. Your body cannot physically power down when it perceives a constant threat to its basic survival. This narrative of personal sleep hygiene was aggressively pushed by corporate HR departments over the last 4 decades. It was a calculated, systemic move to shift the blame for mass burnout directly onto the individual worker, completely absolving exploitative labor practices and stagnant wages. Turns out, you aren't inherently bad at sleeping. You are just exhausted by a system that demands you never actually rest. For decades, we have built entire systems and industries fundamentally designed to keep us tired, stressed, and desperately buying solutions that simply don't work. From factory owners stealing our natural biphasic rhythms to pharmaceutical companies selling us amnesia in a bottle, the deception is baked into our culture. But knowledge is power, and exhaustion doesn't have to be your permanent default state. Now that you know the rules of rest are completely fabricated, you can start listening to your own biology again instead of a wellness influencer. Drop the biggest sleep myth I didn't cover in the comments below. If this video finally woke you up to the truth and validated your exhaustion, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the lies we've been sold. Sleep well, reclaim your rest, and stop letting them lie to you.